It's that time of the year again where we answer the questions you submitted, and one lucky listener will get their question answered. This is the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast. My name is Elliot, the Blackman, Twitter, Yank. Hello, everybody. Welcome to an International Break episode, and the International Break is an opportunity for us to answer your questions. The Mailbag episode is something we like to break out when there isn't a lot of Arsenal news floating around, which sort of feels like the first time in a long time there's not major Arsenal news floating around, but you've submitted wonderful questions, and as is our way, we will answer, I joke, not one, but possibly as many as 3 of your questions in the 90 minutes that we go for today, or 2.5 hours, or whatever it winds up being. Boy, oh boy, would we love to have you join us for some of the spectacular stuff we're doing over on the other side of this fine program, over on Patreon or Apple subscriptions. We had Friday Night Clive on Friday, and we did a cool thing. We did a new concept, thanks to Graham for submitting it. 3 things that excite you, based on what you've seen so far. 3 things that worry you, okay? You can bet which ones were more natural for me to answer. We also did Power Rankings, our first look at who are the strongest of the traditional big clubs this season and how they're faring. We're going to have some really fun and new concepts over on the Patreon this week, and we'd love to have you there. So if you use code AVP, it's a couple of bucks, a couple of quid, whatever you're spending, a couple of euros, right? A couple of whatever the currency is, and you're with us, and we'd love to have you along for the ride. Otherwise, we'd just love to have you here. The season feels like it's getting ready to launch. We knew this opening salvo of 3 games was going to be interesting. It's going to be a challenge. Then right into an international break. Now we are ready for launch, and the Champions League is coming back. We got the Port Vale game coming up. So there's going to be some interesting stuff ahead, and we're going to have a lot of fun, cool, exciting content for that. Now, I am here to tell you that we are going to do a podcast today, and here to do it with me is Paul. Hello, Paul.
Woohoo!
And hello. Clive. Hello, Clive. We will have Tim along later on this week, I imagine, although I know he is dealing with quite a lot at the moment, so we are going to cover him best we can. Phil was on last week. Thanks to Phil. He'll be back in the near future, as will many other people. But these people are the ones who are here now, and they are going to answer some of your questions. And look, it's not the question I would have expected to have teed up first, but it's the question that I think is on everybody's mind. A lot of people asked it. Mashio at Chunkathonk, which is just a fantastic handle, I have to say. Chunkathonk asks Clive. Well, not asks Clive, asks all of us, but I'm asking you, Clive. Are there lessons to be learned in the way we use Marino versus how Spain does? Because he's clearly a goal scorer, a very good one, actually. A lot of these questions also focused around the idea of, wait, I thought it was conservative of Mikel Arteta to pick Mikel Marino, who, if you were not following, scored a hat trick against Turkey for Spain yesterday. Clive, I don't know what a Mikel Marino is, but Mikel Marino might be one of the best pure strikers of the ball I've ever seen. How do we use these unique talents that he seems to have?
Yeah, like how we tried to use them at Anfield, but we didn't really create a chance for him. If a chance falls to him, then he normally hits the target, doesn't he? If you go back and listen to our podcast, even from last year, we would talk about his technique, his timing, the way he opens out his foot to really get good contact on the ball. He always makes the goalkeeper work, generally. And Elliot, without his goals last year, where would we be, right? Our season would have ended the moment Guy pulled his hamstring. That's where we were. And he got fitter in front of our eyes, and I quite like him. And I think what I'd like to know, I know Odegaard wasn't fit, and he probably would have started. But I think the manager was really happy to start Marino in that role, and I think he sees that as his best role. The second stroke third midfielder in a 3. The one that can get the goals next to a centre forward. He sees him as a goal scorer, and when I tweet this stuff out, I tweeted something out last week saying, I'm not sure what Marino is, a few clips of him, but I know one thing, he's not a DM. That's just what I said, and that's made it look even better a week later, right, when he scores a hat-trick and the goals were beautiful. But he's a player that I like because I don't know what he is. Sometimes I think we know everything about everybody, but with him, I think we're still learning, but we have to allow ourselves to learn and don't categorize it. And one thing I was banging on about last week is parroting what other people say about people we are still working out ourselves. So when people say it's a conservative selection, it's a selection maybe with off the ball in mind, but let's not pretend he can't play. That's the thing for me. And I think Sometimes we fall into these traps when we question them and question the manager's selection, which he will make mistakes, by the way. I'm not sure I've ever known a game that we've played and lost or drawn and not thought we could have picked somebody else or made an earlier substitution. Honestly, I don't think we've ever podcasted one. So that's always going to happen. We have to accept it. This is a good player. So with discussion maybe is where is he in our hierarchy? Is he getting closer to the first 11? My personal opinion is that third midfielder role is up for grabs. And I don't care where it goes, and maybe it's going to be horses for courses, but that wouldn't be a statement I'd have made a year ago.
Yeah. I mean, that to me is the fascinating wrinkle here, Paul, because there is the possibility, and we did this on the countdown episode last week, so I don't want to repeat the concept, but the midfield has a lot of permutations now. Because for the first time, really, in a long time, we have other players than Odegaard who feel like they can be a bit of a 10 influence. I'm just using the numbers as a shorthand, right? But more final third oriented in their midfield play. And so when you look at that group of Rice, Zubamendi, Marino, Odegaard, Eze, Nwaneri, let's throw Kai in there. There's a lot of interesting permutations. And I think if you wanted the off-the-ball, box-crashing, goal-scoring midfielder to be on the right in Marino, you could very easily pick Eze on the left. But what do you do with your £100 million best midfielder in the world candidate, Rice? You could drop him back if we think he can handle that role. How do you think Marino's goal-scoring for Spain and goal-scoring for us could be unlocked, if at all possible?
Oh, sure. You go to Clive for the tactical question. You come to me for the wrinkle.
Yeah.
The wrinkles.
There's a reason I'm coming to you for wrinkles, Paul.
Yep, thanks. So I think the Marino one, I'm with Clive. We're working out I don't think we've yet seen what he's going to be for us fully. He's not going to be a striker, apart from occasionally. And we've seen him play the left 8 to limited success in a kind of early last season. Season before, he got off to a slow start with injuries and joined us late. And it's frustrating because we haven't seen him play in his natural habitat for a number of games. And I think the Anfield game is pretty interesting with him because his circumstances there are he was not well supported, right? I don't even think Mikel played the game of the first half that he quite expected. It was the kind of game he expected, but not the battle, the intensity in midfield. I mean, it was we had the ball and we had control. They had the ball for a while. There wasn't this huge battle in midfield. And so I don't think we saw it quite play out. I think Marino tended to be isolated as we played it around the back a bit. So I think it was a pretty false read on him, and I think he's still a bit heavy-legged. So he's not at that point in the season where you can see the full Marino. And I think it's a very interesting proposition what he is. But we're starting to like him much closer to the box. And with Clive, he's not a DM. He could be a second pivot. He can absolutely be a left 8 for us. But we've got a lot of players who are going to play in his area. That's the other side of it. I mean, it's not just Kai as an afterthought. Kai could get a lot of mileage at the left 8 spot. We've got a lot of tough games coming up. I'm just generally in the mode that I don't know what's going to happen on the left 8 side. And I also think the Odegaard point's a great point, which is unless he plays at the level of the best season where he was a worldie for us. Last season was not his best season. We would all say that. And he had some fitness issues. If you can which Odegaard do you have? Because if it's not peak level Odegaard, there's 2 spots, left 8, right 8, which are going to be up for grabs. And
have we lost the Wi-Fi?
On the plus side, Marino is a very elegant passer, absolutely class finisher, and his mental cool when he's finishing those shots. You'll see him sometimes almost peeling off to celebrate as he's hitting the ball. He knows, he trusts his strike. And so getting him in and around the box is paying off dividends for us. but it's kind of, there's 4 or 5 players who are up for 2 spots there, but we have a lot of tough games to come. So hopefully we're going to see them all fit and firing, competing, alternating, and we get to see a bit of everything.
Yeah, I'll take the unenviable position of just making some of the critical comments about Marino, which is that, first of all, I think the international game is quite a bit slower. There's quite a bit more space. Obviously, the Turkey national team compared to the Spain national team is a bigger gap in talent than you would probably find in the Premier League. And the reason I raise this is that I think you just don't have the time in midfield. I think his passing quality and his lack of acceleration and some of his work in midfield is not at the level we require to build play. The interesting thing about Marino that makes him such a hard player for me to understand and analyze is you have to stop thinking of him as a techie Spain midfielder and think of him more like what I think Tim Stillman was saying to me on socials is more of like a Fellaini type role, or a Scott McTominay, a guy who comes alive around the box, who can play little one-touch stuff around the box. It's really intelligent movement and has as pure a strike of the ball as there is. And so for us, I don't know that you can have him plus Rice and Zubimendi. And that's obviously what we tried at Anfield. And it's not that I regard it as conservative, and I'm sorry to go back to that narrative. It's that I just think it lacks a bit of the progression and control that we'd want from our midfield. And so, Clive, the player that's going to come under some focus here, obviously, is probably Odegaard, because, as Paul pointed out, if we have the Odegaard of 2 seasons ago, that's a first name on the team sheet. If we have more of an Odegaard of last season, you could flip this whole thing around and have your more 10-type player off the left, and a Mikel Marino could be a very valuable player in that off-ball role. So these situations will probably resolve themselves over time, but as you know, in the Premier League, we don't have a lot of time to figure things out because every drop point is an uprising, is revolution, is revolt. So how do we figure this out without it costing us along the way?
Yeah, I think all those options on the table there, yeah, I think what we have to do is open my mind up to the fact that we can do a number of things. You know, from the moment we signed Zubimendi, I felt this is going to change a little bit how we play from a playmaking point of view. And we have to balance out the playmaker versus the executioner. We haven't seen Eze as a playmaker off the left yet. That's going to make us think differently about the interior. So if we have Eze and Saka on the outside, they're sort of winger type, playmaker type, midfielder types that can score. Then we might look at the midfield 3 and say, okay, if we got those 2 playing, what do you need in the middle 3? And these questions will present themselves to us. You know? And the exciting thing is we've got these options. And I'm not here to pick the team. I'll tell you that for nothing. I don't care. But I tell you what, the team will be obvious when we see them play and realise where we have a balance issue and where we don't have a balance issue. Even from the Liverpool game, when we all sort of maybe thought we maybe got the balance slightly wrong, maybe our intent wasn't offensive enough because that's all burned into our brain through narratives, etc. But when we conceded the goal, when we started to concede passes to first centre midfield, certain players were on the pitch, you know, and other players weren't. You know, we didn't make those changes at 0-0. We made them we made the changes at 0-0. It wasn't when we already conceded. So who knows what the game could present itself. In the end, we conceded a free kick from 32 yards, and that's the end of it, and that's burned into our brains about what we look like. But for me, going forward, we are still learning about what our midfield, and we've added 3 4s to the group. What does this look like? How do those 3 4s affect us? How does it affect the changes that we make, even off the bench? We should be keeping our minds open to all of it, Elliot, and see how it presents. 3 games is not enough. We haven't seen Eze from the start. We haven't seen Kai and Gyokeres really play together and share the minutes, you know, really effectively, what that looks like. Odegaard just had a period where he's out. Saka, he's already been out. We've got so much to learn, really, but we've got enough games from which to learn it from.
Yeah, I think that it's one of these weird situations because it goes against my instincts, which is my instincts have always been and continue to be that you have to know your best group because when the critical moments come around, you have to know who to call on. But I think, Clive, you've always pointed this out too. That will reveal itself in time. And I think the challenge is the intensity of the Premier League season and the feeling that you can't drop any points means that any decision the manager makes that isn't regarded as the most obvious decision, the one all the fans want, will be met with derision and extreme criticism if it doesn't work out. But to your point, Clive, like we do need to find out, can we play Eze at left 8/10 and use Marino at the right 8 and drop Rice deeper? We need to know if that can work. We need to know if we can play without Odegaard at times and have a different profile in the right 8, except if it doesn't work, then it's going to be regarded as a mistake. And all you have to do is look at Anfield, where the perception was we should have started an 18-year-old who's never started a game in the Premier League in midfield as the obvious non-conservative choice. We obviously clearly should have done that instead of Marino, who's a conservative choice, who a few days later goes off to play for his country and gets a hat trick. It is going to be incumbent upon us to accept that the depth of our squad means chopping and changing at times. But Clive, I'll come back to you with this quickly. Are we going to have the wherewithal analytically to understand why we're chopping and changing? Because inevitably some of those changes won't work. And then we're going to be back saying, why the heck did he do that?
Yeah, we have to understand what drives decisions. So, I sent something out this week saying the way that the coaches see Marino, for example, is not how many fans and outsiders see him. And so that's one thing. We need to understand our players first. You said something there about playing an 18-year-old who's never played an interior game from the start at this level before, let alone Anfield away, which is the hardest game in the world. And yet people want him to start. And so you can understand the decisions, which is where I was absolutely fine with. For me, it was the ability to change based on the game that presented itself, which was a far bigger issue. If a manager picks the first 11, I never worry about it. Let's see what the game plan is. Right? What are we trying to do? Right? So does the team fit the game plan? Are we able to execute or not? And if we can't, what changes do we need to make based on either what we want to do or what the opposition has just done? That's the game. That is the game, right? So that's the only issue for me. So learning about Mikel Marino, learning about Wanyeri, who basically had his best interior game just only a few days previously. So we haven't got a long data set there. Learning about Eze, who we're just learning about, who's just a YouTube comp, until we see him in our kit. We've got 20-odd minutes now, so we're building that up. We think we know about Martinelli. We think we know about Saka, and we're learning about Gyokeres. We don't know if he can play 90 minutes at the big table yet properly. We've lost our centre forward and we've lost our centre back, and our distribution to the right hand side will disappear for a period of time. How can we consolidate that? So there's so many things that are unproven yet. So I'm prepared to be patient, Elliot. Don't know about you, my friend.
Well, I can confidently inform you are alone in that condition. Paul, I don't think we want to go too much longer on this, but it is the one we got the most questions on. And I think the reason we got the most questions about it is not just that people are fascinated by Mikel Marino, but because I think there is a lot of focus on how we get the most attacking impetus out of the group we have. And we have a group that to me feels like that Rubik's Cube, that if you just turn the right thing horizontally and the right thing vertically, then all of a sudden this attack will just click. Is it possible, though, that sometimes you just have to say, yeah, we have a lot of talented players, and Mikel Marino is among them, and he's really unique. But the idea that we now have to find room for him because he had a hat trick against Turkey is probably erroneous. I am still not convinced that a regular midfield role for Mikel Marino in the Premier League is the way forward for us. Not because I don't think he's a talented player, and not because I don't think he has goals in him. He clearly does. I just don't know that we are built to sustain a player of his profile in our midfield, especially for games where we have most of the attacking impetus on us, and the midfield has to provide the ball progression. I don't know. I could be wrong about this. I mean, I think it's also partly a Declan Rice challenge. Declan Rice is such a phenomenally talented footballer who can do so many things. But I think if you're going to play him in the left 8, you simply cannot have a box crashing off the ball player in the right 8 as far as I can see it. I don't see that working. So is it necessary that we figure out how to use Mikel Marino? Is that even a thing that has to be solved for? Are we just over-indexing it because he just had a hat trick and an international break and nothing else is going on?
Yeah, it's very hard to ignore international hat tricks, especially when you feel you kind of shy a goal or two and some attacking panache, and then
great point. Yep.
Like the guy was on the pitch in both games, Liverpool, this international game, and so the only difference can be the manager. No, the only difference is not the manager. The only difference is literally everything, apart from the guy was on the pitch in 2 different games. I kind of haven't put any thoughts into this, but hey, let me workshop it here. He feels like the Edu of our team, a really important role player. Okay, midfielder. Okay, left-footed, gets into the box. There's lots of differences. Neither of them was the quickest, sprintiest player. Very important within your squad. And his superpower may be he's a really good squad player. And while, I'm with Clive on the you don't pick the team. Well, Clive doesn't. And starting 11's not as important. I think it's variations on a theme. But you got to know the theme, and I'm sure Clive would agree with all of that, which is you kind of got to develop an identity for the team, who the exact players playing it are and what the variations are. And we've had such an influx. What did we end up with? 8 players, 7 outfielders. That beats the six signings we brought in the summer of Ramsdale, as I like to call it. That's a massive influx of players and variations, etc. And then the players we have need to hit their form. We need to see the full Odegaard. And then you can have a view as to what the issue is. And you need to see Marino playing that pretty much a lone 10 with Rice and Zubimendi a little deeper and interchanging, but Marino kind of a little isolated with players like Martinelli's not really in form. Nani's never played for us, as a starting, Gyokeres is just finding his legs. I mean, there's almost no read you can take out of Liverpool, and you just it's tough, but you got to hold, not just judgment, but you got to keep your mind so open at the moment because we haven't seen the pieces. Back to your Rubik's Cube. We have not begun to twiddle the cube. It's really interesting. On the other hand, we got to do it without dropping points.
It's a hell of a turn of phrase.
Yeah.
Not begun to twiddle the cube.
Yeah, twiddle the cube.
I don't know. It just sounds wrong.
Does it? Not to my ear, Elliot, but then I was brought up in a more closeted environment, a naiver time, a simpler time.
Yeah, I have no doubt.
Yep. And so, yeah, it's really tough. It's really tough to say who these players are. I'm a Marino believer, but not as a starter. I think he can play really important minutes, but he can't play 3, 4, 5 starting left 8 or right 8. Other teams will figure him out a bit. And the whole left 8 area is really interesting because you got Rice, Zubimendi interchaining. Rice will get forward. Calafiori sprinting into that area. All those patterns have yet to be developed and seen. So, I think the concern, the fear, the panic about where will it come from, it'll come from all over. And that left 8 is going to be the most dynamic and attacking we've seen it in seasons now because we have the players to fill those spots and do things between Eze, Calafiori, Kai Havertz maybe playing the left 8. It's two attackers up front, Havertz and Gyokeres is something we'll see at times, and the games will be split into 60, 30 minutes, 70, 20. We're going to see lots of combos, different phases of games, yada, yada, yada.
Yep. Yeah. Clive, this is a different question, but it stays on the same theme. So rather than putting it in a different place on the pod, I'll ask it now because narratively it'll make more sense. I don't know why I just explained literally the art of having a conversation, but now you saw behind the curtain there. This one comes from Lord Gunnar, who says, what do you think is holding back Odegaard to getting back to his best? Do you think a midfield trio of Eze, Zubi, and Rice is worth trying? Odegaard is a player that I still believe is one of the most important we have, one of the most talented, and is the player we saw of 3 seasons ago and 2 seasons ago, and that will come back. But for the first time, we have abilities to build midfields without him that people will probably be curious about seeing. So are you curious to see Eze not as a left wing as a 10 and go Eze, Rice, and Zubi? Could you flip Rice to the right? What do you think of that configuration?
I like the idea of Eze from the left. Should we just start there, should we? That's where he's played most of his football for the last few years, on the left-hand side. He's normally got somebody on the right-hand side in Elise or Sarr, and he's got a centre forward that can run and hold. Right, so We have a centre forward that can run and hold. I think how we cradle Eze is going to be key in what we do, and we've got a couple of players that can do that and give him the ball. So let's just start him there. I will counter some of the things that I keep hearing: left 8, right 8. We are more this season playing a double pivot, a lot more.
Yep.
Right. So, and we're using people's ability to go into areas. So if Zubimendi fancies following the ball, he does that. He doesn't stand like we used to do and playing like a V, with our 6 and everyone ahead of him and everyone high up the pitch, and we play 5+5. That's what we used to do, and then we join the attack that way and keep spaces condensed. We are far more using the double pivot to drop into the back line to sort of make sure we have our +1 in the build-up, and then using our fullbacks to be a little bit more progressive and aggressive to get closer to our wide men to create triangles in wide areas. I like it. I'll be honest with you, I like it because the 2 passes at the base can really go long. They can slide through, and Declan Rice can, when he decides to go and push on and go and press, he does that. And Zubimendi decides to push on and go and press on the right-hand side, he does that. So I really like this new way of playing. I really do. Marino, for me, does not fit in the base part of the team. I think he's better in the higher part of the team. Yep. So that puts him into the higher end of the pitch where Odegaard plays. And the reason why Odegaard's situation could be under a bit more threat because Zubimendi is a bit more of a playmaker. And so for me, let's just see what happens. I think everyone sees Eze with the tail on his back, and by the way, I don't know how many of them shirts are going to sit in the next game, and they want to see him play there. Well, I don't think that's his best position. I think he's much better facing the play from left-hand side when the whole game's in front of him on his right foot. So why are we taking him to Arsenal and then getting him to play on the right half of the pitch? Obviously, he can do it, but he had a couple of chances from the right half of the pitch for England this week, and they weren't successful. He's better coming from the other side. So let's settle him down to a new team on the side of the pitch where he is comfortable, and then see what develops from there on after. I'm really interested to see how he develops into this team, actually. And I hope, beyond all hope, I'm not sure if we've got any Eze questions later on, Elliot.
We do. It's coming next.
But I'll save for what I'm sure you're going to ask. I hope, beyond all hope, he feels free enough to play, because we want him to be him. And so just because we are quite a complex positional-based team, we actually want him to be him and to be free and to roam and go get it and follow it and pop it and shoot. And I went to women's game at the weekend. There's a player called Olivia Smith, played her first game. Within 20 minutes, she just got that ball in the Eze position. She's rolled 3 players and stuck it in top corner. You might as well close goal the season right now, And now she was a wide player, playing wide, but she decided to come inside and she had the ability to go past 2 or 3 and pop it into the top bag. So we should not be restricting anyone from doing that, regardless what system we play. I want to see more of it. People taking responsibility and taking the shots on, taking people on. I don't care where it is on the pitch. It's all about how you react if it doesn't work out. So the Eze thing, I can't wait to see it develop. I can't wait, but I'm not going to put him into a box yet until we see him in his best position, which I think it is on the left, produce something, then we can work out where to go. I know that, last thing, injury will decide a lot of things for us, won't it? Sometimes another team, we got issues, and so we'll end up playing somebody there because that's the only one we got left, so that could take care.
Yeah, well, I'll stick with you just for a second then, Clive, since we're on it. And Odie Kelvin on Blue Sky actually asked, what's your opinion on Eze performance in England? The amount of people that want to draw any conclusions whatsoever from a walk fest against Andorra, where everybody was at 1/3 pace, is, I was going to say surprising to me, but it's actually not surprising because it's just the only thing to talk about. But what's your opinion?
Well, these World Cup qualifiers are just a joke. We have a international system where we do everything in our power to not make the best teams play against each other until they get to a tournament. And then we watch England play Andorra. I don't know how many times England played Andorra, but I feel as though we played Andorra quite a lot. That's what it feels like to me. And then we watch these players who know they're going to win. They're playing against window cleaners, for God's sake, right? So they know they're going to win. Andorra, I think 160th in the world or something silly like that. What are you going to do when you've got a 60-game season? What are you going to do? Are you going to run your backside off? Are you just going to do exactly what you need to do? You could do exactly what you need to do. And so people taking conclusions from this is, I think it's just boredom, basically. And
it's opened up Pandora's box, Clive.
Oh, for God's sake.
Yeah, brilliant. And basically, what's actually quite illuminating is that Eze, the one player that the whole football world loves, suddenly he pulls on an Arsenal shirt, he pulls on an England shirt, and suddenly he's the devil. I mean, what? Literally, how has this happened? How has this happened?
Gave Adrian Durham a chance to have something to talk about finally. Gave him a 3 out of 10 or whatever he did.
And suddenly, he played for Arsenal now. So, mate, you're up for it now. So, literally, there is not a person in the country that didn't love him a little while ago. Now, mate, he's getting a verbal kick in. I find it illuminating, and maybe says a lot about other people and says a lot about the fact that someone said to me, there's a lot of people getting their checks watching play with Arsenal, mate, and that's all it is. It's all about engagement, isn't it? It's all about numbers.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, again, I watched the game. I regret that, but I did. First of all, he's playing on the right, which I'm not sure suits him, but that's beside the point because it's, to your point, against Andorra. I watched a lot of players walking around very cognizant of the fact that they could win the game at walking pace 3 games into their club season. And, we saw France suffer multiple serious injuries. Well, serious. Doué and Dembele both injured. It's not great, and we don't want to see that happening. And I think the players are cognizant of it. It certainly would be in their mind. The funny thing is, if you want my American take on England, which I'm sure everybody's saying, oh, please, that's why I've tuned in. It's just astonishing to me how little actual central midfield passing talent England seems to have and develop. And I know he's injured. Adam Wharton feels like the kind of thing in England need, but everyone they try at the base of midfield in England just struggles to pass the ball forward and progress the ball. And I think England has a chance to win the World Cup. They have the chance to win the Euros every time it comes around, but develop a central midfielder who's got some techers and some progressive passing. Just one. You just need one, for God's sakes. I mean, Clive, you're smirking, but it really seems to be the same thing over and over again. We watch Kobe Mainu unable to do it. We're watching players just take that position who can't do it. Elliot Anderson was praised to the rafters for a performance against Andorra that was functional and aggressive. But it's can someone pass the ball forward?
Yeah, well, England have tried Trent in there, didn't they? That didn't work out. Yeah. So they're desperate for that sort of player. I'm not sure if they know what they need at the moment. They just need to get a midfield unit. And I think that's the key, having a unit and not putting it all onto one player.
But that's probably got too many units. You need a Spanish
but putting it all onto one player.
I
mean, personally, Wharton, Rice, Bellingham is not hard to pick, is it really? That seems to me a 3, and you can decide where they stand. And your front 3, well, we know Harry's going to play. He's going to play 90 minutes no matter what, because he's got some stats to pad. Right, so we need to sort that out. We know that Saka Madueke will probably play on the right-hand side. Left-hand side, where Marcus Rashford is playing. I'm a fan of Rashford, not many people are, but unless he goes bar 3 and sticks in top corner, no one's going to like him there. And so we have to decide whether it's Odegaard. It's the same things, right? And it's England. I'm afraid. Let's see if Wharton makes it, and then we can wait till he has a bad game, then we can rip him to pieces.
Yeah, I mean, everyone will say, he doesn't tackle. He's too loose in the tackle. And it's I get it, but you got guys who can do that. Look, this is going to be a recurring segment because I want this pod to be as popular globally as possible. I think Elliot gives his take on the England national team is the segment that's really been missing from the Arsenal Vision podcast. I'm sure everybody right now is nodding along in agreement. So let's swiftly move on. Paul, we got a lot of questions about Gyokeres, but Petit's Ponytail 1, Luke asked, so many questions, but his first is the one I'll ask. Why is Gyokeres considered the main man striker in the media when Kai cost more and is paid more? It is interesting. We've regarded striker as a position we had to augment, and so we did. But we augmented with a guy who actually, of the 3 strikers that moved from outside the Premier League, was the least expensive and is probably on the lowest wage and costs less than the other guy we have who plays striker for us and is paid less than the other guy who plays striker for us, who has a better pedigree, you could argue. So what do you think of that? Why is Gyokeres just presumed to be our main man striker when there are a lot of other factors that would suggest he was brought in to be in a platoon at striker or even potentially the rotational option?
Well, I get it. Like, we've had years of Arsenal need a striker. Arsenal go out and spend big money on a striker, not just any striker, a striker who has absolutely humongous striking numbers, like
that's
the
a good
key
point, yeah.
metric, loads and loads of goals. So the only debate with Gyokeres is, can it translate from what he did based in Portugal to the Premier League, which after all is a very fascinating topic. And on the other side of it, you have an ephemeral character in Havertz, who basically only Arsenal understand, right? I mean, what's our song for him? 65 million plus
Down the drain.
plus bonuses.
60 million plus
and
bonuses and signing on fees.
down the drain. Kai Havertz scores again. It's almost like, you see, you didn't understand our elusive. And Kai Havertz is an enigma wrapped in a riddle, wrapped in bacon. And
It's delicious.
we ourselves don't quite know how to, and that's kind of how we play him, right? He does kind of 10-ish, 9-ish running, connecting, and goals kind of come. They emerge from our style of play, whereas Gyokeres has set patterns. You know what he's going to do. He's going to come at you. And so I get it. He's the most defined striker, and Havertz is kind of a tweeny player. I mean, we're debating, should he be will he be a 9 or a 10 more for us this season? Where will he? We're not asking that about Gyokeres. We're not asking, will he play on the wing a bit, drop, will he start from the left? Very defined profile. I think Gyokeres will start more than anybody by some measure at striker. And but we will alternate, rotate, and Havertz we may see a lot more kind of 9 and 10, two forwards playing together in games than we have seen for a long time. Lots of it's back to, there's not a lot of spots when you pick a starting 11 with all the players available, and you like Marino and you like Rice and you like Odegaard, and suddenly it starts filling in. But somehow I think the season will provide opportunities. The Greek gods will smite a number of players along the way, and we'll see maybe partnerships we haven't seen before evolve, and we might love Gyokeres and Havertz starting with Rice and Zubimendi behind them, and Eze and Saka off the wings, and Calafiori charging into midfield, and we're like, how did we ever see it any different?
Yeah, exactly. That it's so early at the moment. I'm a Kai Havertz fan. There goes my comment. I'm a Kai Havertz fan, and what I saw pre-season was he was moving really, really well, and there's no doubt in my mind he would have started at Old Trafford without a doubt. And Gyokeres would have come on and stormtrooped that late on while he's adjusting and getting fit. Now he's doing that in front of our eyes, so we're judging him accordingly, and let's hope he's doing extra shuttles when he's away on the international duty, with him and Isaac doing extra work to get ready to play. But we haven't seen that yet. We haven't seen what we did. I mean, look, Elliot, the way my brain is tuned now because of watching this team so much without a real centre forward, I've often thought, a player that we all like, he would have sent the world on fire if we'd have bought him and not bought a centre forward. But someone like Antoine Semenyo is the sort of player who's a multifunctional forward that can play in central areas, but really plays in the half spaces and drives forward. That type of player, I could easily see in our group, and we don't buy a Gyokeres, right? But we had to buy a centre forward, and we haven't got that centre forward gene in the club. And you heard me say we need that, because there's going to be a game where you need someone to be in those areas to put the ball in the back of the net. And we had too many draws last year where we didn't have that. So you can't turn away from the profiles that we need. And I think he was the best option. I think he'll prove that throughout the season. I don't think he's going to be the main striker. I think he's going to be one of two. And that'll develop throughout the season. And I think he'll play a lot of games. He'll have a lot of minutes. And I think when Kai's back, he'll do exactly the same. And that is a modern game. So, yeah, I'm not too concerned about this at the moment. I just wish... I look forward to even in 4 weeks' time when we have a bigger sample size to really see who we are. But every time I pick up my phone, someone's out for 3 weeks. Do you know what I mean? And so that is a bigger concern to me.
It is interesting too. I think one of the reasons we are so laser focused on Gyokeres is we have so many players who are hybrids in a way, who don't clearly fit into a role exactly the way we'd expect. Rice was raised as a center back, we thought was a 6 and is playing 8. Right? Kai Havertz is a tweener, as Paul already pointed out. Mikel Marino, as we already pointed out, no one totally knows exactly how to use him. Eze is a left 10 that we bought to potentially play left wing. Nani Madueke is a right wing who we bought to play left wing, right? We have all these players. Calafiori is a center back who plays left back but plays striker, right? All the things that you were saying, Paul, that Clive has pointed out. Miles Lewis-Skelly is an academy player who was raised in midfield and became a star left back for us. These are sort of weird times at Arsenal where players' positions are fluid and they're only wherever Mikel wants to put them. And then we get this guy who's like, stick on 9. Can he play? No, he's a 9. But what if no, he's a 9? We're like, great, clarity, finally. But when you have clarity, then you laser focus in on that clarity. And I do think that getting the most out of him is important. I think there is a way to get the most out of him. And I think we should be a little bit patient. I know that's not the word of the day in terms of letting partnerships develop. All 3 of the strikers who have come in from other leagues have not looked super convincing yet, but we'll see. But I do think that there's more to come from him. And having said that, when Kai Havertz is fit, that's a hell of a player to try to keep out of the squad. So you want depth. You have to be prepared for the idea that these players are battling for their time on the pitch. And we've got some questions about that and where the minutes go at left wing in particular, plus Miles and Ethan questions, and my favorite, a soft factory emotional question. But if we're going to get into our feelings, nothing gets me in my feelings like telling you about Shopify. Because I get emotional about the idea of you having the best e-commerce store possible. That's what gets me up. I wake up and I'm like, what if someone who listens to the podcast wanted to create a store to sell their wares and had no ability or understanding of how to do it? Do you know the sense of disappointment that I would feel and insecurity? Well, we're not going to let that happen because you're going to use Shopify. The number one way to build an e-commerce site that looks professional, that puts your products in all the places they need to be to sell, and lets you ship and fulfill orders and do all that without having to know anything about tax law or shipping, supply chain integration. I don't even know what those words mean. I've just heard them said in a business context before. The point is, all you do is you write a description of your product, you say what you want to sell it for, and you pick some pictures. If you can do that, you can have a site that looks amazing, that will go out to Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and all the places you need to be selling, because you can't just sell on the web. You need to sell on social media now. It takes care of that, cart optimization, all that. And it'll do it with a $1 per month trial. How about that? Established in 2025 has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ArsenalVision, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/ArsenalVision, all lowercase to start selling Shopify today. Shopify.com/ArsenalVision, all lowercase. Do it now. And also, this podcast is currently engaged in a paid advertisement from BetterHelp. I don't think that's the exact language. Let me say the language. This is a paid advertisement from BetterHelp. Is that not obvious? I feel like that's obvious. Anyway, look, therapy is important. Do it. If you want to go into an office and sit with a therapist in person, I highly, highly recommend it. I did it, and it's incredibly powerful, important, valuable. Whatever you're going through, it can help. Okay, so what does that have to do with BetterHelp? It has nothing to do with BetterHelp. But you know what BetterHelp gives you? Access to do that if going and sitting in an office with a therapist isn't an option or isn't your preference. See, I don't think it has to be replacing that. I think it is an option for people who can't drive, don't have the resources, don't have the time, don't know how to find a therapist in their area, don't feel comfortable sitting face-to-face in person with that yet. You're not at a point where you feel comfortable doing that. Can't find a specialist in the area of need that you have. BetterHelp basically says we're going to remove all the complexity, time, and friction away from this so you can more easily choose to do it, right? If you had to work out every day, but the gym you had to drive to was an hour and a half away, you wouldn't do it. What if you had a gym in your home, all right? Well, that's not that affordable or realistic for most people, but BetterHelp is, and you can get access to therapy, and you can work through the things that are giving you struggles, and you are not alone, and you don't have to be alone. And whether that's your friends and your family and your personal network, that's great. But a professional therapist is something that we should just all incorporate into our lives to be a healthier person. I really passionately believe it, having done it myself. With over 5 million people supported to date globally. BetterHelp is now available in the UK with thousands of counselors who have expertise in a wide range of specialties. With a 4.9 out of 5 rating and over 1.7 million client reviews, BetterHelp makes counseling affordable and convenient, and you can switch counselors anytime for no cost. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/vision. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/vision. Do it now. And finally, NordVPN, very simple. It's a VPN. It's an app. You put it on your device, you click, and you're browsing in that area. The NordVPN app is, of all the things we've offered, and I have used just about everything, literally, that we've offered. In fact, I have new Manscaped products in my home right now. But Nord is the one I use the most often by far. Because when I want to click on a video related to football and it says not available in your area, that drives me nuts. When I watch the match reviews of the day show, I can't watch it in my area. Now I can. I can sign up for streaming services in other countries where shows are available that aren't available for me. You can do all this. In fact, there's a show coming out that my wife and I love. The new season is out, but it won't be out in the US for a year. Guess what? It's out for me now because of NordVPN. It's an app. You put it on your device, you use it. Good, done. That simple. NordVPN.com/ArsenalVision. You get a discount, huge discount off your Nord plan and 4 months on top, and it's 30 days risk-free. NordVPN.com/ArsenalVision. 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 Do it now. Is that enough of that?
Indeed.
Got it. I went on a bit there. But as you can tell, I am a passionate man, and my passions will not be restrained. Clive, I'm not going to ask you the emotional question. I'm not going to do that to you. How about this? With Eze, Martinelli, and Trossard vying for the left wing position alongside Nani Madueke when Saka's fit, which one will get the least amount of minutes? It's pretty crowded over there, isn't it? Who's the odd man out? They can't all share the role, nor would we want them to. There's going to be a clear hierarchy. How do you see the odd man out developing there?
Well, in the short term, maybe Trossard will be the false nine, with Kai Havertz being out for how many weeks? It depends on what you read. So
12.
I think he's going to drop into that. So you could say, if I'm answering the question exactly or precisely, he'll be the odd man out. And football changes very, very quickly. So Martinelli's in the mud right now. As soon as he gets a shot on target, we'll all say, Martinelli's, he's not a bad player. And I'll be there.
When will he do that, do you think? I'm just kidding.
But as soon as he beats someone and goes past from the 60 top corner, he'll just come back. And that's the key. And the key is just to keep trusting them, even though they're struggling. You've got to keep trusting them and hope they turn it around. At the moment, we all want to see Eze, so the answer is Eze will get the most minutes. And Madueke looks very strong at the moment. Very strong. He had a good game for England. And what I do like about him is he sees the running behind and he just goes. And he almost forces the pass. And I think Madueke is almost telling Martinelli how to do it, how to sort of stay in the player on the bullseye line, tell him what you want and make your actions so definite that the ball has to come. And I think, whenever I talk to players, I always say the same thing. If you want the ball that way, tell people you want it that way. Go and speak to them. Tell them you want it over. I'm going to give you the eye contact, but I'm spinning, I'm going. Too many times I see Martinelli running and not getting the ball. Who do you want to blame? I don't really care. You're on the pitch for a finite period of time. You maximise it as a player and make sure everyone knows what you want and keep making their runs. When they don't give you the ball, give them a rollicking. And that's it. And this is elite football. You might have 2 of those runs a game. You can't waste them. By being a secret, so yeah, I think Martinelli may struggle at the moment, but that could change in a week. He's playing for Brazil right now, looking a little bit better against lower quality opposition, builds his confidence. But I think Martinelli probably be the one that miss out at the moment, Elliot. But one of our listeners did a great question. I hope you're not going to ask it, but I saw it come through, and something that Paul said last week I thought was really good. When Gyokeres was fading in that game at Liverpool, we sort of took Martinelli off. Well, actually, should we have moved Martinelli to centre forward to keep them back? Rather than a fading threat in Gyokeres where you're still not fit enough, we kept him on by bringing on Eze for Gyokeres maybe, and you still got a sprinter down the middle, and that would have made them think maybe, make a bit more active, because I think he's fitter at the moment. I thought it was a really good question. So will Martinelli be a late game centre forward? But again, Trossard is fit now, so we got all the options, haven't we? So, I thought it was a really good assessment. Paul, you raised it first. I think one of our questioners did it last week as well.
Well, Paul, then I'm going to ask you a tricky question, and maybe one that you just dismiss out of hand. We'll find out, I guess, together. Big Red Arsenal at bigredarsenal.bsky.social says, the majority of the criticism for Martinelli's flatlining performances has been directed at the player himself, but do you think Mikel and his coaching staff might be getting off lightly? We had a world-class talent. Do you think we could have developed it differently in terms of role or position?
Just that seems like an easy out for the player, and I think I've been very supportive of Martinelli along the way. I think there's a much better player than the player we've seen. And like, generally I see with him a very positive mentality, whether he's starting or not starting. I never see, like, Trossard can look a little sulkier, a little bit more nose out of joint if he's not on the pitch or proving it. You never get that with Martinelli. So I think he's one of those guys who's done a remarkably good job at keeping his head clear and positive. Now, obviously, he's struggling a little bit with confidence and his own game. And kind of something I said the last time we talked about him, there was a time we used to talk, Tim would talk about how he used to play the street football thing from Brazil, and that's where you get these tricks and you do these things. You'd be like, ooh, where did that come from? Well, where did it go to? So there is a confidence aspect of it, but at the end of the day, the player has to do it. And I don't think you get a lot of vibes that Mikel doesn't look to give players a platform to play, and the support and we had Carlos, what's his face was the. We win the dog, for God's sake. We had, was it Cuesta? What was the name? Cuesta. Right, there you go. Like, he was the guy who'd sit down with you and make you feel good and talk to you about your feeling. Like, I don't get any sense that this is an environment where you don't get the support, the coaching, the understanding of what's going on. He's had a lot of opportunities. I don't think he's always had the left side build up that would suit his game. And I kind of think, but like, time starts to run out. He used to be a bit of a shot monster. Now he is not. When we're playing in transition, his head isn't up enough. And a lot of those things are confidence things, making the choices. And it may just be that the best thing for him is having him and Eze competing and sharing games, opportunities, a little bit of heat off him. And maybe he can play more than one role, as we talked about. Maybe he's the left wing, but also a guy who can come on at 70 minutes, or games where we're pushed back and counter-attacking and we need a guy to streak up the pitch, run in behind. But I do think he needs to kind of take a little bit of a step back, re-find himself. But no, I don't get the vibe at all that in Martinelli's case that he hasn't had the support, the coaching, the wherewithal to be effective and successful for us.
Yeah, don't want to burn this guy to death, but I think he's probably been suffered due to us changing. And so, without mentioning the word toothpaste, but you know what I mean by our back line coming up the pitch.
We've moved on to pancake analogies now, Clive. I don't know if you've been following.
But that's indicative of our back line squeezing up the pitch, right? And the higher we've got, the less space we're playing in. And what is Martinelli? Is he a big space player or is he a small space player? He's a big space player. So now we're asking him to develop in small spaces and become an intricate dribbler. Well, you know what? Trossard and Eze are better at that, aren't they? They're better in small spaces. They like to trick people, see where they are, feel them, and create combinations in small areas. And so our game has changed. When he arrived into our team, we were this young team travelling up the pitch with two 21-year-olds on the outside, sprinting their hearts out. Nobody tripled them. You know what I mean? No one tried to kick them, and we just went up the pitch. Saka would give him the ball quickly, and he could just run free, my son, run free. They haven't worked us out yet. And then suddenly we got better, and we squeezed the life out of teams. Now we're giving him the ball. And soon he gets the ball, he looks up, and there's Kieran Trippier ready for him. And right behind him is Bruno, if you get past him. And right behind him is Fabian Schär. got to get past all three of them, son, and get a crossing on your wrong foot. The game's changed. The game's changed, and he has to develop. And so my theory with him was always move off the ball. Give it and go, but go hard in behind the centre forward, because that creates your transition game. It's like a mini transition, but you've got to be a movement player, not a static player. Now people say, that's the manager, Clive, he's coached you out of him. Well, I don't think it is. I think we've got better and he's suffered for it. But who else has suffered for it? Zinchenko's suffered for it because we exposed that left back a lot. He's suffered, hasn't been able to go with it. Other players have not been able to go with it, not been able to defend man for man at the back, so they've gone. You know, midfielders that can't get around the pitch like Sambi and then create duels and get it and give it, they're gone. You know, and that's what happens. Smith Rowe wasn't able to physically do what we want him to do off the ball in particular. He's gone. You know, so it's just natural evolution. It's hard because we like them all. You know, Paul's got a Smith Rowe shirt. He told me at the live do. I'm sure he'd like to see him play. Every time he comes on for Fulham and does well, we all think, oh, he's a good player. You know, but we've gone somewhere else, right? We've got Declan Rice doing that job on the left-hand side. We've got Madueke running up and down. And they're stronger, more powerful, more execution, I'm afraid. And it's the nature of the game, right? So Martinelli, I hope he comes back. I've killed him a lot. I don't want to kill him, but he's got work to do.
Can I add a bit?
Yeah.
The challenge from, like, Clive made a great point about, you know, if the opponent is sitting in, Eze is the kind of trickier, more creative option from the left. The other problem Martinelli has is Eze is bloody brilliant on the counter-attack or transition football. So, like, it's like both types of games, both game states show off Eze's real strength. And Eze's super heads up, right? He's looking around at his options. He's very cool with the ball when the heat's on, which is something we haven't always seen in transition. So, look, Martinelli has his work cut out for him. But it's an opportunity for him to learn, and there are different players for him to combine with, and Gyokeres peels to the left, so Martinelli can maybe move to the inside. I think the one place he has a bit of a superpower is alternating from the left to central when we have enough movement. Like those runs in behind central, while Gyokeres are kind of like the red arrows, a military aircraft, Elliot. And the patterns they form, like they can red arrows it on the left. He needs to develop some partnerships and relationships with Calafiori charging up. That's his challenge. He can't do it on his own. And especially now that opponents have kind of figured him out, he's got to build these new partnerships with Calafiori, with Gyokeres, with whoever the most common left eight, probably Declan Rice is in this scenario. But that's with Declan maybe sitting back a little bit more with Zubimendi and them interchanging. There's space up there for them to form new patterns, and that's his challenge. That's what he's going to have to do.
Few things here. And this is undoubtedly the section people are going to hate the most, even more than Elliot talks about the England national team, if you can believe it. There are two things that a player wants to do when they decide to become a professional footballer. One is earn enough money to support themselves and their family for a lifetime. And two is achieve personal glory, or, glory for themselves and the team they play for. Martinelli has achieved objective one. He came to Arsenal for £5 million as a teenager, and he now earns enough money that he will never have to work again. He has achieved some glory. He plays for the Brazil national team, pulls on the Brazil shirt. As a teenager from Ituano, making a £5 million speculative move, that may not have been something he dreamt of being in his, I'm sure he dreamt of it being in his future. None of us would have expected it, and he's gotten there. Gabriel Martinelli is a stunning success as a player. And whether his future is with Arsenal or not, he is a success, period, end of story, for all the things players want, maybe except for that last little piece of glory, and that may still be out there for him. But we cannot demand success of our manager and our club, and at the same time have sacred cows who we just keep waiting for and just keep saying, well, if the manager had used him differently, if we'd trained it, if we had just tried him in this other position, those things might all be true. But you know what else might be true? We have to move to a new era at that position. And that player, no matter how talented, may not be the fit for it for us to achieve what we want. And by the way, this is the pancakes waffles things. People will say, oh, you'll say that about Martinelli, but not Odegaard. You like pancakes. Why don't you like waffles? Odegaard's a different conversation. We can have that one too. That's not the one we're having. We're having this one. Right now, Gabriel Martinelli is a very talented player who makes a fabulous wage at a huge club. He's been a huge success, but I'm not convinced at this point that we can get to the level we want to get if we are relying on him regularly at that position. It is not killing him or his talent. And it may well prove that the manager failed him or all the things people want to say. But for me, we cannot demand the level of success we are demanding and also have sacred cows. You could say we should have been more patient with Fabio Vieira. There's a talent in there. We should have been more patient with Sambi Lakanga. There's a talent in there. This is top-level football, and unfortunately, it's ruthless. And it is the waiting too long that costs you more than the going too soon. My biggest criticism with Eddie Nketiah is that we waited too long. The 11 games we started him 2 seasons ago might be the difference between us and Mikel having a Premier League title. So you have to kill your darlings, as we say. You cannot have these players who have a privileged position of just being in the team, and there may be others in our team that you feel that way about, but I don't want to go too much further on this topic, Clive, but I'll give you just a final word on this, which is simply, it is not killing a player to say that they are talented, but that at this time in our evolution, we may be at a point where their ability to take us to where we want to go has run its course to some extent.
That could well be the case, Elliot. And you said that beautifully, and it's hard, right? Because we like these players generally, right? And all of us here would love to see this player shoved his right up our throats. Absolutely.
Clive, I
would.
made a mug about him. We made a shirt about him. I loved this player. He was like my boy. You know?
But there's also a lot of people that expect Arsenal to win something this season. Mm-hmm. And that is taking priority in many people's minds, right? So, and there are many people, internal and external, saying we've got to win one of the league or the Champions League. Well, one we've never won, and the other one we haven't won for 20 plus years. But we've got to win it this season. And by the way, the other teams are spending money, and it's like we have no competition. We have to win it this season. And for that to be the case, then we have to accept that we're going to have to improve certain position, which we have done. And we have said to the outside world, we've signed 8 players. And in our minds, because we are so nice as fans, oh, it's a good squad now. We've got the depth we need. Has anybody thought for a second that actually a majority of those 8 might actually play a lot of games because the guys that were in the position to win didn't quite do it, weren't robust enough? It's all on the table, right? We've done this for a reason. We've done this for a reason, to try to win and to create a competitive environment, to create that extra edge. And I'm here to see how it all unfolds. And Martinelli is part of that picture. And if he either steps up, or I'm afraid, it's like for anybody else, he won't play, right? Simple as that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and just so we're clear, right? There's an idea of like, hey, support the players. Of course. When I go to the ground, I sing my heart out for every player that's out there and support the players. In terms of wanting to see them succeed, of course. But analysis is analysis. And I think in your analysis, you have to discuss what's best for the club to achieve the things it wants to achieve. And we have 4 options in that position now. And that is a situation that is going to create a lot of pressure.
And if we win the Premier League, kind of none of these players are going to care, right? If you're a role, like Edu was an invincible, he didn't start every game. If Martinelli's career moves on and he goes to another club, but he leaves as a Premier League winner, it's going to be great for him. Now, I'm not wishing him at the door. I hope he takes that step up to where we saw him. And at the end of the day, look, if you win, everybody's going to be happy. Even Trossard will be walking around with a smile on his face. So,
well, let's not write fan fiction.
So, this is the season. We really, really go for it, and not everybody's going to be a starter.
Yeah, well, so we got another question about minutes that I think is also relevant, so we might as well bring this up. Bobby Northbank asks, last season, injuries helped us discover how amazing Miles and Ethan are, but also forced us to rely on them more than we maybe would have wanted. This season, do you think they will be happy with cup minutes and late sub appearances like a normal 18-year-old, or would a loan move with regular starts really help them more? I'll stay with you for this, Paul, just for a second. I think it's a really interesting point, right? Had they not been as central to our plans last season as they were, they might have been more comfortable with a glide path into the team this season. But Miles in particular became an England international and our first choice left back last season, and Ethan made a lot of starts. So are they going to be happy with the role that seems available to them now? What's your take?
So they're going to measure themselves all the time in practice against these players, and they're going to be itching to get starts. And by the way, there's a lot of games. And one or two of their rivals for a position are not 100% fit all the time, and you get a run of games and you do really well, and then you're hard to get out of the team. That's the nature of the beast. They're young. I think the balance in the dressing room of the personalities will keep it all pretty stable. They both seem very level-headed guys who should. It's going to be a little challenging because they're going to want more than maybe they're getting at the moment, especially with Miles in the England setup. That's going to create an urgency and immediacy for opportunities, but he's away with England right now. And I'm sure Miles is going to get plenty of game time. I think the challenging one is going to be Ethan, because he's a talented player, but the second last half of last season, he didn't get much of a look in, and when he did get a look in, he didn't really put his personality on the game, whereas Miles always puts his personality on the game. And I don't know if it's just the challenge of where they play on the pitch, but that's the one where I could see Ethan's frustration. We've brought in more players who play in that section of the pitch that are going to squash his minutes. You know, you got Marino's got to find time, Eze on the pitch, Martinelli, Trossard, blah, blah, blah. You know, there's a lot of players that are those kind of, that who gets to play this week that's going to give Ethan some pressure. You know, we had Max Dowman come on as the super sub option when we needed to kind of do something interesting from the right, not Ethan. He's got loads on his plate there. But it's down to him. He's got to show more personality when he comes on than maybe he has done for a little while. He's super talented. Yeah. Look, I'm going to lean on something I just said, because repeating things that got you both nodding tends to be a good strategy for me. But it's simply, I want Ethan and Miles to be at Arsenal for the next 15 years. I want them to win things at Arsenal. I want them to be stars. But that's not my goal. My goal is for Arsenal to win things. And so Ethan and Miles will play as much as their talent and their performances allow them, right? Clive, I mean, do we worry sometimes too much about, we need to win everything, but also how are we going to get Ethan and Miles on the pitch? Like, you can't have it both ways. They will play because they're talented. They may play less than they want if their performances aren't at the level needed. They may play more than we expect if their game goes to a new level and they push people out of the team. Is it kind of just now they have to compete and we should be comfortable with that?
Yeah, they have to compete. They would expect that too. When they sign their contracts, and they know the score. It's not an easy path. You have to fight against international players that also want to play. Right? That's the only currency that matters in football, is minutes. Right? And so they're going to have to fight for theirs. I do think they are way ahead of their peers. If you look around all the England youth teams, look at the minutes that they've had. They've got a lot of minutes. I did feel a little bit sorry for Ethan when Max came on at Liverpool, if I'm honest with you. A gut feel. I thought that must have stung a little bit, you know. But if he's had a conversation with the manager, he wants to develop in the interior, then who's to know? You know, and Max's first pathway may be on the exterior of the team at his age. That's a safer place to put him. Although watching him at the weekend, I'm not sure how safe that looked. The amount of fouls, I think he had 9 fouls against him at the weekend, playing against Spain under 19s. So he's a special. They
axed him down.
They did.
Time and time again.
And the world is so wicked. I mean, there's chat out there now saying he's a diver now for getting hacked down 9 times in a game. The guy got booked on his 7th foul. I think the only discussion to have is, what are these referees doing? You know,
here's how bad it was, Clive. There was a penalty. The penalty was literally he just kicked him in the box. He didn't care. The number 16 for Spain, whose name is escaping me right. He just kicked him right in the box, just kicked him in the leg. Yep.
Yeah, and it was embarrassing, to be honest. And there was a bit of scrap after the final whistle with England players protecting, saying what the hell's going on, and fair play to them. I know the FA won't like that, but for me, I think that's brilliant. I bet the coach and dressing room said, well done, lads. That's what you do, you stick up for your teammates, sort of thing. And so that stung Ethan a little bit. And Chelsea would have loaned him out by now to Strasbourg. They would have loaned him. They'd have plumped his value up somewhere else and sold him for 50 million. Right? So, but the fact that Chelsea would have bought him this year tells you he's not reached his potential. There's money in him, and we've got him signed, and he's our asset now to do what we want to do with. And I hope we do the right thing, and I'm very proud of the club for having those 3 teenagers into our first team squad. I think it's amazing. Paul said a line there about personality. Him and Miles have different personalities. That's absolutely clear to anybody just watching. One is a bit more introverted, and the other one isn't. And we don't need to guess that which way around that is. And the positions that Ethan wants to play requires a level of football personality, and that's going to take a bit of time to develop. He's 18. How many 18-year-old 10s are running around in the Premier League, let alone in the top 6 clubs? I can't think of one. Look how long it took for Phil Foden to be trusted by his manager. Now Phil Foden's got all the medals in his back pocket, but it took a long time for him to get that trust. People say, got to loan him out. Well, they kept him. They kept moving him around. They kept dipping him in, dipping him out, until eventually that season when he was Player of the Year, although I thought that was wrong, but he was Player of the Year, he delivered in the final third of the season by scoring those long shots into the net, and he won City that league when I felt we were as good as them, at least. So got to be patient. And that was probably Phil Foden at 23, 24. We've got to be patient. So I'm not worried at all.
Yeah, they're great players, and they're going to play. But they are teenagers, and they are not the best version of themselves yet. I mean, it sounds crazy, but 5 years from now is when you should start to see the best of what they are. 5. Right? So if they are role players in a team that's trying to win the Premier League and the Champions League for the next 3 or 4 seasons, they're still very much on track to have a hugely successful Arsenal career. I mean, it is the case that by the time Max Dowman is of the age when you'd expect him to be starting for a big club, Bukayo Saka will be retired. You know what I mean? So we're saying, well, how's he going to come through with Saka on the right? Saka will be in a rocking chair when Max Dowman is 25 years old. So it's like, it is one of these things that we worry about because the news cycle and our urgency about things has gotten so immediate, right? Everything is so immediate. You're only as good as your last performance. We only care about the next lineup. But clubs do not have the luxury of thinking that way. And they have to build for long-term success while achieving short-term success. And I don't think there'll be a lot of people. If we start Max, Ethan, and Miles Lewis-Skelly every game this season and finish 3rd, I don't think people are going to be saying, wow, what an amazing season. We're so good. We started 3 teenagers and finished 3rd. I don't think that's going to be the reaction. So, we're balancing priorities here. And we'll finish with this then, because I think it is the thing that I'm struggling with, certainly, and I'm sure other people are as well. So, and unfortunately, I think I may... no, here we go. Let's find it. I want to name check the person who asked the question. I may just have to ask the question and then come back to name check them because I am struggling. Here it is. I got it. Felipe, Alejandro. Paul, how do you balance the joy of being a fan of one of the best teams in the world with the stress of this project needing to win something? And for people rolling their eyes, we're one of the best teams in the world. We are. We are. If you look at the rankings to win the Champions League, we're considered one of the favorites, along with Liverpool. We are joint favorites with Liverpool to win the Premier League. You don't get that if you're not one of the best teams in the world. We were in the last 4 of the Champions League last season. We've been the second place team in the best league in the world for 3 consecutive seasons. So we are one of the best teams in the world. And yet somehow, at least recently, it hasn't necessarily felt as fun and joyous as it should to be this good. And obviously everyone understands why. But so how do we balance that? How do we enjoy the journey? How do we balance being very, very good in an era of that's one of the better ones we've had in a couple decades with the stress of the project needing to win something?
Well, you can't, and you shouldn't try to. It's a bit like
okay, that solves that
the
problem.
right to pursue happiness, right? Mm-hmm. If you try and pursue happiness, you're not going to be very happy. It's fleeting moments when things are going great. And then, the other side of it is against the balance to the need to win. Well, that's football, right? It's the stakes. It's what makes it important is the fact that everybody feels this critical need to win, which is ridiculous because only one team can win. So that means every other team is going to be some level of not happy. And even the team that wins that season might spend much of the season fretting that they won't win. And, you look at Liverpool, the season they won it during COVID, and they're like, yeah, we won, but there's nobody around to celebrate. And how much time do you actually spend being happy as it's not a thing. What gives it its significance and importance is we need to win. And whether you're Everton or us or Sunderland, you need to win that game. You got to win that game. For us, we got to win the Premier League this season. And we had a great and fun season when we had all these young players and, Ramsdale's best season and Smith Rowe and Saka. And that was kind of a magical season with ups and downs, but it was like our purest, simplest season because we'd gone from nowhere to somewhere and we could see the future and progress, and we didn't think necessarily we'd win that year, but there was the surprise. That's a kind of a unique bubble moment that doesn't come around for very long. That was our simplest time. But now it's down to brass tacks. We spent a lot of money. We've got a lot of good players in. It's on the line. It's not going to be fun. It's going to be a battle, but it's going to matter. And being irrelevant isn't much fun either. Not being in the frame to try and win things is not much fun. So, yeah, it's not going to be much fun this year, guys. We're going to have games and moments where it's fantastic and we're off our heads with delirium. But life is pain and suffering, Elliot. That's what I got to tell you.
Well,
thank you, Paul.
In your opinion. So let me just update with this. There is some breaking news at the moment that the APT rules, the Associated Party Transaction rules that were being litigated between Manchester City and the Premier League, that litigation, that action has been settled. As part of the settlement, the proceedings are terminated, obviously, and it has been agreed by Manchester City to accept that the current APT, Associated Party Transaction rules, are valid and binding. Okay? They also have agreed to make no further comment as part of this settlement. That is not the 115, 117, 120 charges case. If you want my back of the napkin math on what I think this means, having read nothing other than that statement, it is that this settlement is some kind of quid pro quo for a slightly lesser punishment in the 115 charges case, that they are accepting the APT rules in exchange to get some kind of leniency in the breach, in the fraud case. So
75 charges.
Yeah, you know what? I'd be fine. How about this? 2 points per charge. We'll cut it down to 75 charges. Okay, 150 point deduction. We'll see in the championship. All kidding aside, look, this is obviously important. We'll get an expert on to discuss it, assuming that the further takeaways from it seem to warrant discussion. But my immediate reaction, again, is not to conflate this with the 115, 117, 120, 125 charge case. The APT rules, which are fundamental to the Premier League being able to enforce any kind of PSR regulations at all, essentially prohibit clubs from engaging in transactions with parties with which they're associated because those valuations are inherently invalid. Right? So when you get a sponsor that you are associated with and say the sponsorship is worth £1 billion, that would violate the APT rules. The current rules are now valid, no longer being challenged, and we will see what the quid pro quo is for that settlement because, as a reminder, you don't settle a case unless you get something as part of that settlement, right? Both parties want to get something, and we will have to see what City got in exchange for agreeing to settle that case. I think it benefits the Premier League because from everything I read, the APT rules would be hard to uphold in a court, period. So the Premier League gets to have APT rules at all. What City got will probably be figured out in the very near future. And hopefully it's a stern punishment still nonetheless. Clive, unless you have an immediate reaction to that, I think we knock it on the head for today, and we set off with our week of content and look forward to this international break ending in the Forest game ahead.
Yeah, I wonder what the costs, how they're going to divide up the costs, because these lawyers don't work for free, Elliot. And it's been going on for quite a while, and the Premier League have to wear those costs. Across the league has been sharing those costs, and the Premier League is just the clubs, by the way. And the clubs voted these APT rules in. So let's see what happens. I think financially, we're not done. I think your assessment is spot on, mate. They had to give something up. And they raised this after the charges, didn't they? And I think it was always going to be a vehicle for, how we say, lesser punishments down the road. So good assessment, my friend. Let's see what happens.
We'll see. I mean, yeah, given that there's clearly an NDA, a non-disclosure, a confidentiality component of the settlement, based on what their statement says, we will get interpretations of this, but we will not get further insight into it if it is sealed. So we'll have to guess. But I imagine when we see what happens with the other case, we will know very clearly what was agreed upon here. So, you can't predict the one without the other. I think we got to leave it there. Behind the scenes, we've had a bit of a recording issue today, so I have no idea if this is a 90-minute pod or a 70-minute pod or a 10-minute pod, and you, by this point, will know, but we do not, so we're going to find out together. We will have a patron pod tomorrow. Working title is Elliot Deep Dive on the England national team, but we'll see if we can get another American on that pod to join me for it. And then we will have some other patron stuff this week, including the ever-popular Friday Night Clive, where we'll look ahead to the weekend's fixtures and more. We're still deciding whether a Liverpool rewatch is worth doing. We didn't have time last week because we did so many pods, but if you still want to see it, we have the video, and I think it could be interesting. But let us know so we know if that's something you want to see. Okay, we'll leave it there, Paul. Thanks.
Woohoo!
Clive, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
My name's Elliot Smith. We love you, and we will talk to you after Arsenal 10, Forest 0.